Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today. I'm just going to give it a minute for people to arrive and then we'll start the presentation. Okay, so I think we'll get started. So thank you very much for joining us today for our session on finding the right fit and how to go about choosing a university that will work for you. My name is Jenny Oxley and I'm from Leeds Arts University, and I'm joined today by Jessica Wrightson from Arts University Bournemouth and Charlotte Davison from Loughborough University. And we are just 3 of the 9 creative universities in the UK that are taking part in these sessions over today and yesterday. So I hope you have had the opportunity to join some other sessions as well. We will have plenty of time for questions at the end, but do feel free to put questions in the chat as we go through, and whoever is not talking will do their best to answer those. So just to run through what we are going to cover today. So how to go about choosing a university and where to start, because of course it can be a bit overwhelming. And we do appreciate that as an international student, then of course your first thing is just to even think about what country you want to study in, let alone what university. So we will talk a little bit about why you should consider the UK in the first place and what important considerations to take into account when you are looking at the UK. We'll also talk a little bit about the rankings, because of course there are plenty of different rankings out there, but we're going to talk a little bit about how to look beyond the rankings and what else you should take into account. We'll give you a very brief introduction to our universities, and then we will have plenty of time for questions at the end. So first of all, when you're choosing a university, where should you start and what should you think about what is important to you? So first of all, the most important thing is to identify universities that offer the subject that you are interested in studying, because in the UK, you do apply to a course at a university. You don't apply just to a university in general. So the first thing is to think about what area is of interest to you. What do you want to spend 3 years of your life studying? And then think about identifying universities or locations that offer that course and that are well known for that course and will have the facilities to be able to allow you to study that course in the depth that you want to study it in. In the UK, creative courses are offered at highly specialised public universities. So the vast majority of universities in the UK are public universities, so managed, regulated by the government. And the creative courses we offer are delivered by extremely good facilities, and it really is a very deep dive into your subject. So in the UK, we don't offer really electives or minors outside your subject area. So it really is 3 years of intense focus on the area that you have identified that you'd like to study in. Some universities do offer dual majors, and they will be identified at the course level. So for example, if you are studying the creative arts, you would maybe apply to study, for example, BA illustration and animation, and then that would be your subject. But most of the time you are focusing on one area all the way through your degree. And of course, creative industries in the UK are a significant portion of the UK economy, but I won't talk too much about that because I know that Jessica is going to cover that in more depth later on. And of course, the location. So it's very important when you're choosing this, making this very big decision about where you're going to live for over 3 years of your life. And in the UK, we have over 200 universities in a wide variety of locations. So even just narrowing down the location is a very good place to start. So first of all, of course, do you want to be in a very big city or in a smaller town? And of the creative universities represented over our sessions today, then Liverpool, London and Leeds, of course, are bigger cities, Falmouth, Bournemouth and Norwich, smaller cities. So really it's just a case of thinking where you think would suit you and what kind of atmosphere you want to be living in. I mean, in the UK, there's such a variety of universities that you can even go to the Highlands of Scotland and there are universities there. So there really is somewhere to suit everybody when you're trying to narrow it down initially. Cost of living, of course, is a very big factor for a lot of people. And in the UK, the north of the UK does tend to have a slightly lower cost of living than London and the southeast. Of course, want to think about local transport links and how easy it is going to be to travel around your local area, and also the region, because of course it's great to get out and about and explore the area while you're there. So in the UK, it is generally easy to travel between cities by train, of course. Lots of cities do have their own airports, but of course it is only London that will have a subway or an underground, as we call it. You want to think about airport links and how easy it is going to be to travel from your home country, and also a big university or a small university. So in the UK, we have all shapes and sizes of universities. Our universities, well, for example, my university and Jessica's university are slightly smaller universities. Charlotte's university is a bit of a bigger and more comprehensive university. So it's really whether you want to be in a very large university. So some universities in the UK can have up to 30,000 students. Some are much smaller. I know at my university, we have under 3,000. So it is very small. And of course, city or campus in an urban or rural location. So some universities will be based right in the city centre with the buildings spread out amongst the city. Some universities are based in a campus where their buildings are all together. And that's whether you want to be in a rural location as well. So some universities are in the middle of the countryside. So really there is something to suit everybody in the UK. And now I'm going to hand over to Jessica, who will talk a bit more to the creative industries.
Excellent. Thanks, Jenny. I always have to tell my favorite story about cities and towns in the UK because I was surprised coming from further afield. You did refer to Bournemouth as a city. We aren't a city. We are a town, even though the greater area is almost 500,000 people because we don't have a cathedral. And I do love in the UK that cities and towns are determined by whether or not you have a cathedral. So that's just a bit of fun trivia for the international crowd. I'm just going to touch a little bit on the creative industries, and you will note that we have these charts that we've obtained from the Creative Industries Organization in the UK. So a wonderful organization that advocates and represents our creative industries. They are a couple of years old. This is the most recent data that they have. And you will note that this is pre-pandemic. And so we do want to acknowledge that obviously the pandemic has had an impact on the creative industries, and that would be worldwide. But I will note that all of the organizations, all of the statistics point to a recovery. And in fact, they anticipate that the creative industries will recover to at least pre-pandemic rates. So let's look at this information, but we will be taking this with a bit of a grain of salt. But I promise if you do some research into this, we have some studies, they demonstrate that the creative industries will recover. The most important thing that we like to note here is this concept of the GVA, which is the gross value added. It's similar to a number like a GDP, and that's something we hear more frequently in general conversation, but the gross value added is a measure. It's a measure of the productivity of any given industry. And that as a result of that, its contribution to the economy. And so the creative industries in general are one of the largest contributors to the UK economy. And that is not only through what happens locally, but it is a massive export industry as well. And in fact, I was just looking at some statistics this morning, and the UK film and television industry won 1 in 5 global awards in the industry last year. So it just shows that not only are things happening locally in the UK, but it is an international export. The other thing that's really interesting here to see is the growth. So the change in GVA for the creative industries is far outpacing other industries. And this has continued for, I think, about the last 10 or 11 years. So the pace of growth continues, and it is constantly outpacing other industries in the UK. In fact, the film, television, and music subsector accounts for about 2/3 of the contribution and was pre-pandemic the fastest growing sector in the UK. And you would know this if you've had the chance to watch Downton Abbey or The Crown or some really wonderful other ITV and BBC productions. You will see this throughout. And then you can just see a little bit of a breakdown of the different sectors. IT, software, and games is always very strong. And in fact, that would be the one sector that continued to grow during the pandemic, because I think a lot of people went straight to those online environments to kind of while away the hours of lockdown, but still wonderful breakdown across all the different creative sectors. Next slide, please. And so a second slide here, and we'll look at a couple of things. The first one is the lovely map in the center. Now, depending on how good your knowledge of the geography of the UK, you might have a sense of what's going on here. The biggest number in the pink down at the bottom there would be the London area, the Greater London area. And of course, that is the largest representation of creative industry jobs. That won't surprise anybody. That would go for any country in the world. However, it is good to see that there is quite an even distribution of creative industries, companies, jobs, and opportunities scattered throughout the United Kingdom. So that's good to know that you don't have to be in London. And the other advantage of this, and this is speaking for 3 universities that are not located directly in London, is that access to London is actually very easy because of how small the UK is. And in fact, I think we would all say this, you hear it all the time from our presentations. Oh, we're just about 1 to 2 hours by train from London. We all say that because the transport links are very, very good. So don't feel like if you want to work in the film industry or you want to be a fine artist that you must be in London. We have incredible opportunities scattered throughout the countries. And of course, the other thing to show here is the job growth in the UK average has, again, like I said earlier, outpaced other industries for the creative industries. And then lastly, I just want to mention the slide that the part of the slide that shows self-employment versus employed by a company or an organization. And I think sometimes when we have an idea that we want to work in the creative industries, we don't always see the industry outcomes at the beginning. And it's very, very common for creatives to be self-employed and choose this as a way to manage their careers. So you might be self-employed, you might set up a company for yourself just to manage your opportunities, or you might do something that's called being freelance. And freelance means that you get to pick and choose. So you might work with one organization for a year, you might work with another organization or a company for a time, and it allows you just to pick and choose your projects, that you're not always being told what to do. And a lot of our students really love this opportunity. In fact, I presented with another university yesterday, and they talked about the fact that they have the largest proportion of self-employed graduates because their students want this. And the other thing I will mention about that is we will help you with what it means to be employed, self-employed, or working freelance. When you're studying at the universities will guide you on how that goes. Next slide, please. Okay, so rankings. Rankings is a favorite topic. We all love rankings. It is the default. When we're dealing with a new country, a new market, new universities that we don't really know, the first thing we do is default to other people's opinions. And rankings are a really great way to do this. And a lot of universities will say, there's more to this than rankings. And that's what today's session is about. But let's start by talking a little bit about those rankings. So we've listed a couple of options here that are popular for the UK. The first one is the Times Higher Education, which is an HE, which is a university publication. And then the second one is The Guardian, which is a newspaper. It's a national newspaper here in the UK. It's quite well respected. And then QS is an international organization that works in the business and the industry of the education world. And they all publish rankings, and there will be more than this. And they are certainly worth looking at. But all we're asking you to do is to remember that this should just be one piece of the puzzle for you. It shouldn't be the only piece. And depending on where you are in the world, every country values rankings slightly differently. And so for some of you, you may not have considered this. And for others, maybe your parents are standing there with a printout of a rankings list going, you must attend one of these universities. It's hard to know, but just really take it into consideration. So one of the things we like to consider, especially when we look at the creative fields and the specialist universities, is many of the specialist universities won't show in some of the ranking tables. And that doesn't mean they aren't good quality. It just means that they don't meet the specific categories that that particular ranking is using to assess the candidates. A lot of rankings put a lot of weight on research output, the number of publications that you're involved in, the funding that you receive from external and government organizations. And as specialist creative universities, while the opportunity for research and funding is every day increasing, it by no means reaches the rate of the health-related fields, the business industries, pharmaceuticals, that type of thing. So we cannot compete in those particular categories. As I said, research is becoming ever increasing a part of our communities, and that's wonderful. It adds a different dynamic to the creative industries. But right now, it isn't fair to compare those universities that do have that research output with the specialist institutions. The other thing to keep in mind is that they won't assess the day-to-day student experience necessarily. Although there is a survey that does, the National Student Survey, that is also worth a look. It can be very eye-opening in some situations. But generally speaking, these published newspaper organization rankings aren't asking what it's like to be a first-year student sitting in your first-year class and what happens for you there. They're much more concerned about the advanced work that's happening at the higher levels. So what a ranking tells you about the senior levels and what it will tell you about your personal experience are very, very different. So there's not one ranking that will give you exactly the right fit for you. You should look at all of them, but please also take into consideration the other information that we're going to share going forward. And I think the next slide is my last one.
Sorry, it's just not moving on very quickly.
There we go. Okay, so I'm just going to start us off with some of the things we want you to think about while you're doing your research, in addition to those rankings that you've all researched. The course content is a really interesting thing. And in fact, I had a really interesting conversation with a student and parent last week because they had received offers on degree courses at 4 universities in film. And they were saying, doing their research, well, why should we choose you? What makes you better? Why not this one? Why not that? And so I went on to the website of the other choices, and I started to look at what it meant that for this different courses. And at one university, the course was just a BA honors in film, and they included a lot of theory, they included film studies, and they included a little bit of filmmaking. And then another one was film and television. And so they did some film, but they also had a TV component, which increasingly is merging in the industry, but still they are slightly separate fields. And then at our university, we call ours film production, and it really is only focused on the one thing. And so I kind of tried to guide them that they should really consider, while the courses have similar names, the actual content and the day-to-day activities wouldn't be the same, and that should be a factor in what she should choose. And I couldn't advise her on which one was the best fit, but it wasn't as simple as I've got 4 offers on film degrees and they're basically going to be the same experience. They would not. So you need to think about, what do you find most interesting and what do you want to do on a day-to-day basis? And in your mind, what kind of career do you see for yourself? Do you know exactly what that looks like now? Or do you want the opportunity to explore and touch on different areas so that you've got the broadest opportunities at the end? Also think about the teaching style. Where some courses include more theoretical work, you will be doing a lot more lecture style learning, which is wonderful, still has a lot of value, but isn't necessarily what a lot of the specialist creative universities are doing. We focus a lot more on the practical outputs. So do you like that style of learning and what works best for you and what you want to achieve? And also look at the teaching staff. So if you're comparing 2 universities that look quite similar and you're feeling good about both, really drill down, and this information will be available on the website of the universities. Look at the individual teachers that you will have and what they specialize in, because those will be the people doing your teaching and you will get to learn from, and they will also help you to build your professional network while you're studying, and they can help you build those connections that will help you find your job at the end of your degree. So just a few things to think about in terms of the course content. It isn't always as straightforward as it looks on the surface. Now I'm going to hand things over, I think, to Charlotte.
Thanks very much, Jessica. So yeah, Jessica has talked about rankings, the kind of more formal things. I'm going to talk about some of the other things that you might want to consider, that's not just about your academic life, because yeah, you're going to university to study a course, which is hopefully something you're really passionate about. It's a course you're going to really enjoy, you're going to excel in, going to get a career at the end of it, which really kind of leads you forward into the rest of your life. But you're also choosing your home for a year if you're doing a master's course, 3 years minimum if you're doing an undergraduate course, add on a foundation, add on a placement year. You could be at that university for a significant amount of time. And I went to university to do a 3-year degree, and I still live 11 years later in the town that I went to university in, which was Loughborough. So you need to think about where you're going to be living and what you're going to be doing, because you're not going to spend all your time studying. As much of the academics on the course would like you to spend all your time studying and working, that's not how it works. You are going to have, hopefully, the best time of your life whilst you're at university. It's really cliche, but there are so many opportunities. It's going to be a really big change in your life, and it should be really, really fun. So when you're looking at your university, think about the person you are. Think about what you want to be doing extracurricularly. What do you enjoy? And that can be the formal extracurricular activities, societies, things related to your degree. What are the employability opportunities? What's the networking? Are there opportunities to take extra courses alongside your degree? But also, if you're a party animal, what's the nightlife like? If you're not a party animal, what else is there to get involved with? If you play a sport, can you do that sport at your university? Loughborough is very, very famous for sport, and we get a lot of students come and study sport with us. But, and I don't know where you guys are all from, but you might have heard of our Olympic medalist diver, Tom Daley. And when he was kind of 17, 18, he looked at where he was going to go to university. And he was interviewed on the BBC, big kind of sports coverage in the UK of what's the next plan. And he said, I'm going to go to Loughborough, very good for sport. We were like, that's great, but we don't have a diving board. So probably not the best place for him, even though we've got some of the best other sports. So you need to really look into that. If you really enjoy drama, for example, but you're coming to study a fine art degree, but you want to do art drama, or you like music, what are the opportunities to carry on those hobbies, those things that you do outside? What are the opportunities to expand your opportunities, join media groups, student television, student radio? What is important to you? Look at what opportunities each university has, and they will be very different depending on the different institutions. But make sure that you find that you're going to a university where you think you are going to have a really good time. And also think, actually, physically, where are you going to be living? When you're moving to the UK, what does the university or your college offer for accommodation? Does the university have its own accommodation? If so, do they guarantee that you will get accommodation on their campus or close to the university? Where is it? And if so, is it 1 year of your course, the full year of your course, 2 years? And also, what do you need to do to get your accommodation? So for example, at Loughborough, we guarantee accommodation to international students for 2 years of their undergraduate degree, as long as you put us as your first choice in UCAS. So look at any of those kind of stipulations to get your guarantee. Where is that accommodation for your university? If it's a campus university, is it on campus? Is it off campus? If you go into a city, where do students live compared to your lectures or your extracurricular activities? And that will vary for different people. For me, I chose a campus university because I'm not very good in the morning. I've never had to commute to school, to university, to work. I needed something that was going to get me out of bed. But I liked that campus environment. One of my best friends from school, she went to UCL in London, and it took her 45 minutes to commute, but she loved getting the tube. She really liked that kind of city life. That didn't bother her at all. And don't just look at the university accommodation in your first year, that will probably be close to your university, but also where do students live in their second or third year if you're doing an undergraduate degree, or if you're doing a master's degree and you're not looking at living in university accommodation, where do students live in kind of private accommodation? And that can also be, not necessarily close to where you're studying. Other things to think about, if you've never lived away from home before, can you cook? Any idea how to cook yourself a meal? Do you like cooking, or would you prefer someone else does that for you? When I was at university, I lived in a self-catered hall. I liked cooking for myself and being independent, but a lot of universities, including Loughborough, also have catered opportunities where your meals are provided for you. Is that something you want to do? In the UK, most of our accommodation is single rooms. So normally you would get your own room, you can lock the door, put your posters up on the wall, make it as you want, but you would normally share facilities. But some universities do have shared rooms, so you'd have a roommate, much more like the American system. What do you want? Make sure you look into that as well. And when you're looking at sharing facilities, would you like your own bathroom, or are you happy to share a bathroom? I shared a bathroom for 3 years with my flatmates in halls of residence. Never had a problem. We had a cleaner that came in every day and cleaned for us, which was definitely a step up than when I had to share a bathroom with my teenage brother and I had to clean it. So that worked for me. But I know for a lot of students, they would choose an ensuite option. What are the contract lengths? If you're going to be in the UK for only 9 months of the year, are you being asked to sign a year's contract? Can you negotiate on that? And also, what is the cost? What is your budget? How much can you afford for your accommodation? And this will vary massively depending on university. There tends to be a rule that London will be the most expensive, and universities further out of London, particularly going further north, might have cheaper accommodation. But there is a very highly ranked university in the northeast of England where their accommodation is very expensive. So that rule doesn't always kind of go alongside. So do have a look into that. Can you afford the accommodation options that you want? And does that impact your choice of university? And linking onto that cost, how are you going to finance your degree? Universities across the UK will have vastly different tuition fees for international students. How much are you going to have to pay to study at that university? And there's not always a fixed rule between how much something is and what that means. Universities can set their tuition fees as they want. So that is something to look into. But also look into how the university asks you to pay. Most universities, I think, would ask you to pay in 3 installments throughout the year. So you're not being asked to pay your full degree costs up front, for example. You have the time whilst you're students to pay that. But also look at scholarship opportunities. Do they have scholarships that pay your full fee, part of your fee, a link to your living costs? What does that university offer? Some universities will have automatic scholarships that you are automatically considered for when you apply to them based on your previous academic results. And that's how we do it at Loughborough. For example, for undergraduate students, we have a 25% scholarship off our tuition fees just for the first year of the degree, but you don't have to apply for that separately. However, I know a lot of universities across the UK have much bigger scholarships, which you can apply for, so much more competitive scholarships, but you would have to submit a scholarship application. So when you're looking, it's another example that every university will do this differently. Make sure you know what is needed for you if you're going to apply for a scholarship or if you're hoping for a scholarship. And consider those deadlines. Make sure you don't miss asking for something that you are entitled to or that you could apply for. Living costs as well. We've talked about the options for your rent and your accommodation, but how much will it cost to live in that town or in that city? Not just your accommodation, but buying your food, traveling around, your social life. Are there any extra costs that you will have to pay for studying, for example? Doing a creative degree, you might need materials. Do you have to pay for those? Are they provided? Those are questions to ask each university. And again, The north is generally cheaper than the big cities or the south of England, but ask each university, speak to current students and see actually how do they fund their degree, and also look at part-time job opportunities. A lot of our international students choose to work, a lot of our UK students choose to work alongside their degree. I did. It gave me the financial independence to pay for my social life, going out. If I wanted new clothes, I could buy that with what I was earning. And it meant that I could tell my mum I was being financially independent and I could spend my money on what I wanted. But also it can look really good on your CV if you've had a part-time job, whether it's related to your degree or just something completely different. So international students can normally work up to 20 hours per week during term time on their visa, but you would need to check your visa conditions. But lots of opportunities for student work at UK universities.
Great, thank you, Charlotte. I think I'm taking over now. So that was really interesting about how to fund your degree. And of course, now we think about the admissions requirements, which of course is an extremely important consideration when choosing your university. So of course, some very basic considerations are: what are the academic entry requirements for the course? And most UK universities, well, in fact, all UK universities will advertise this on their website. Depending on the size of the university, you might actually have to look a bit deeper into it because the requirements might vary by course. Some smaller institutions, like for example, my university, we just have one standard entry requirement across the board. So it's very important to do your research. And you also want to think about how competitive is that course. So it's very important to be realistic because, of course, you will know yourself what grades you are likely to get, and to think about how competitive the course is and how realistic it is for you to apply to that course. If you're applying through UCAS, of course, you get 5 choices of universities. So it's really being a bit strategic and not almost wasting a choice on a course that you actually have no chance to apply for. We're not all Oxbridge candidates, unfortunately. But at the same time, it's important to aim high and be ambitious as well, and give yourself a stretching target and aiming for the university that you really want. So first of all, of course, very important consideration, the academic entry requirements for the course, and then of course, additional considerations as well. So when you're applying to creative universities, such as all of our universities, you will need to think about whether a portfolio or an audition is required for the course. I know at my university, we do require a portfolio or an audition for all of our courses. So that's something that you want to think about, making sure you've put together and that you have ready to go. But the usual advice is don't submit your portfolio or audition in support of an application until you're invited to do so by the university, because you need to follow their instructions carefully on how you submit that portfolio or audition. Something that international students sometimes find a bit difficult to understand as well is our system of choosing firm and insurance choices. So when you make your application through the UCAS system, and bearing in mind that some universities do also accept direct applications, but the majority of applications do come through the UCAS system for undergraduate courses, you apply to up to 5 choices, and you might as well use all of those choices. And the usual advice is to spread those 5 choices throughout 5 different universities, although of course you can decide to apply to more than one course at one university if that is your choice. But again, it's up to you. Assuming, of course, and hopefully you will receive offers for all 5 of those applications. And once you've received all 5 of your offers, you then choose one offer to hold as your firm acceptance. And this, of course, will be your first choice of course. And then you choose another offer to hold as your insurance acceptance. And this is your backup choice. So of course, it is normally again recommended that your insurance choice has slightly lower entry requirements than your firm choice, because of course it is your backup choice. And then the other 3 offers that you're holding, you then have to decline. So that's normally how it works. You hold a firm acceptance and an insurance acceptance. There are additional backup mechanisms within the UCAS system, but of course I won't go into that much detail here right now. So the UCAS website, this is the UK Universities and Colleges Admissions System. And this is how, like I was saying, most students will make their applications for undergraduate courses within the UK. The UCAS website itself is not just this application system, it's actually a really useful resource for an initial starting point where you can do your research about the courses and about all the universities in the UK. It has some very useful search tools to allow you to find which universities offer the courses that you're interested in. And then it does give a lot of detail about those courses and about life at those universities as well. So I definitely recommend this as a really good starting point when you're starting to do your research into what university would be right for you. There's also other useful resources on the UCAS website, such as blogs from international students from all over the world, so you can hear about their experiences of studying at UK universities. And of course, the UCAS website does publish all of the entry requirements for the courses at each university. And you can in fact use this as a search tool as well. So if you have your predicted grades, you can see what universities would offer the course that you're interested in at those entry requirements as well. So UCAS is not only where you make your application, it's also where you can track the progress of your applications and where you will see the decisions from each of those universities as well. And when you've received all of your offers, this is where you'll go on to make your decision and to choose which offers to decline and which offers to hold as your firm and insurance choices. So the UCAS website is a really useful resource, and I definitely recommend this as a good starting point for when you start your university journey. So I've already talked about the UCAS website, but there are a host of other university resources as well, of course, as the university websites themselves. A really good place to start would be the British Council, and they give a lot of information about what you can expect about studying at a UK university, and all about just the universities in general. So the British Council is a really useful place to start as well. University social media, of course, is a really good place to start, and especially for creative universities like ourselves. So the universities will have their main social media accounts, but all of the individual courses will have their own social media accounts as well. So this is a really good place where you can see some of the students' work and see what the students themselves are actually talking about. I know that we've had students at my university that have contacted current students through their social media to get their opinion of what it's like to study at our university. And a lot of the students, especially in the creative industries, are using their social medias as a way of building their profiles, thinking ahead to their creative careers and what kind of profile they want to have in the industry. So it's a very good starting point for the students, but of course it also gives prospective students a really good resource in finding out about the kind of work they do and what it's like to study on that course. And of course, this is especially true for creative industries. So, you know, go find out about what the fashion course is, what kind of student work they're doing, what kind of clothes they're producing. And the graduate fashion shows that will give you a really good idea of what it's like to study at that university. And of course, university fairs. Of course, in normal life, pre-pandemic, we would all have been out on the road meeting students at university fairs, face to face, having a chat and telling you about our universities in person. Of course, you know, we've had to adapt and it's quite different now, but this is why we're delivering online meetings. And we hope we will continue this as well, but we are looking forward to getting back to normal and the opportunities to meet you guys face to face out on the road. But university fairs, if there's one happening in your local area, that again is a really good thing to attend to get a feel for the different universities. And if you go along to a university fair, you might just come across a university that you've never heard of, and you never know, it might be the one for you. So yes, a really good place to start off when you're doing your research. So what next? So I've just mentioned research, and that really is the most important thing, just a starting point of just to start narrowing down your choices and to identify where you think will work for you. The vast majority of universities will have open days. Sometimes there will be physical open days where you can attend in person if you happen to be in the UK when one is taking place. You can go visit the university, see the facilities, and quite often be shown around by current students as well. But a lot of the time as well, universities will have online open days. So that's a really good opportunity to see the facilities virtually and to hear from a lot of the course leaders and academics about their particular courses. We also have what we call applicant days, and this is for post-application. So when students are holding an offer or a place to study at that university, this is an open day, but it's more aimed at people who have already made their applications and are holding offers. So it's to help you make your decision about which offers you should accept and decline. So that's the applicant days. And again, some of them can be in person, where you attend and have a tour of the facilities, and some of them can be online as well. A lot of universities will hold webinars, and these can be aimed at a particular country group, so students from a particular country who are hoping to come to that university, and some can be more course focused as well. Another really good thing to do that we definitely recommend is to chat to current students, and most universities will have this option on their website. So at my institution, if you go to our website, a little chat box will pop up saying talk to a current student. So you have the opportunity to talk to one of our student ambassadors and hear straight from the student about what it's like to study at our university. Of course, you can contact a university representative, so that would be like us here today. And most of the time for international students, you can do this through the international office. We're always very pleased to answer questions from prospective students. And of course, I've already mentioned the university's websites and social media, which again will be a very valuable source of information as you do your research. So we're going to move on now. We're just going to give you a quick overview of all of our universities. So like I said before, I'm from Leeds Arts University, and we are based, of course, as you might imagine, in the city of Leeds, which is in the north of England. We are the only specialist arts university in the whole of the north of England. We are small. We have around 2,500 students studying with us at undergraduate level. We're very friendly and supportive because, of course, there are no crowds to get lost in, and students get loads of contact time with their tutors, and everybody knows everybody's name. And if any students are having any problems, it does really get picked up very quickly because, of course, we're a very small creative community. So this is all why we were named #1 for student support in the What Uni Student Choice Awards in 2020. So of course it follows we have very high student satisfaction and retention rates. Have some very well-known alumni, including Damien Hirst, Barbara Hepworth and Henry Moore. You can see Henry Moore's work on display at the Yorkshire Sculpture Park, which is just down the road from the university. And Leeds is one of the UK's largest city, so there's lots going on. We've got a thriving art scene, thriving music scene, very well known for shopping and for nightlife. In fact, we're known as the Knightsbridge of the North because we're so good for shopping. In Leeds, we have 6 universities altogether, so that's around 100,000 students. So it's very student focused, so there's lots going on. And of course, being in the north of the UK, we do enjoy a slightly lower cost of living than London and the southeast. We have industry standard facilities, and we've won awards for the best facilities at the What Uni Student Choice Awards 3 times in the last 5 years. And we had £19 million worth of investment completed in our campus in 2019. And 92% of our graduates are in work or further study within 6 months of finishing their course. I'm going to hand over to Jessica now.
Thanks so much, Jenny. We're coming to the end, friends, so make sure that you share any questions that you have with us. Arts University Bournemouth, we are located in the very south. I always like to say we're right at the bottom and right in the middle. It's a beautiful spot. If you go any further south, you basically end up in France. So it's a very popular tourist destination. Bournemouth Beach is very, very famous for its beaches. And so it's a lovely part of the world to complete your education. AUB would be kind of a medium, perhaps on the slightly larger side of the specialist arts universities, with just under 4,000 students from about 65 different countries. And it's all on one campus. So it's really a creative community. You see everybody from the different subjects, different courses. You can access all of the facilities on our one purpose-built campus. We've done very well, as I spent all that time talking about how rankings aren't that important, but we've popped some of the league table and rankings into our descriptors because it's always good to have a bit of a frame of reference. But we're particularly proud of scoring very well in the teaching quality and the student experience. And one of the things I'd just like to highlight about AUB is the concept of collaboration is at the heart of everything we do. So in addition to the work that you do on your course, there's a lot of independent work, but we also really encourage you to work with students in your discipline, but also across all of the other disciplines. And one of the ways that we embody this is the Bournemouth Film School. So BFS is a part of AUB, and it is a grouping of all of the courses that touch on moving image work. So of course it includes our film degrees, but it will also include our costume students, our creative writing students. It will include our makeup for media and performance students. It will include in some ways our photography students, our set building students. All of them come together. And the goal is to mimic what it is like in industry by coming together and collaborating and bringing your skills to the table for the benefit of others. We do offer a number of scholarship and bursary opportunities. Charlotte gave some really good information about that, so please do investigate that. And AUB's notable alumni include Edgar Wright, Simon Beaufoy, Wolfgang Tillmans, and Twinks Burnett. Edgar Wright is a name you might know if you're into the films. I think his most recent one was called One Night in Soho, but he's very well known with his collaborations with Simon Pegg. Simon Beaufoy wrote the script for Slumdog Millionaire and won an Oscar for that. Wolfgang Tillmans is a very well-known fashion photographer. And in fact, he was visiting campus last week to do some work with our photography students. And Twinks Burnett is a fashion designer who's had a little bit of a rapid climb in the industry. And fun fact, AUB offers the only Instagram-based prospectus, so I recommend you have a look at that, but we don't do printed copies anymore. It's all on our Instagram account, which is just a bit of fun. It's really cool. Check that out. And now we'll bring it to Charlotte.
Jessica. So yeah, my name is Charlotte. I am the international officer, well, one of the international officers at Loughborough University. And Loughborough is slightly different from the other 8 universities participating this week, as we're not a specialist arts university. We are multidisciplinary. So if you come to Loughborough, you'll be studying alongside lots of other creative students, but also amongst science students, engineers, business students, sports students, history students maybe, and we mix our students all up on campus. The reason I chose Loughborough is because of our campus. We are one of the largest campuses in the UK, based right in the middle of England. You can see the campus on there, surrounded by lots of green open space. Our campus has everything you could possibly need. You can move onto campus and never leave. We're not going to expect you to do that. You'll explore Loughborough town, you'll explore the rest of the UK, Europe, but it makes it a very easy place to live, particularly when you're first settling in. Everything from your accommodation to your studio space to doctors, gyms, cinema, nightlife. It's a really, really great place. And we have about 18,000 students studying with us on campus, which makes a really, really great environment, lots of stuff to get involved with, and we're very well known for our student experience. We do also have a campus in London, which is postgraduate only, on what was the Olympic Park in London, where we offer some digital media programs and creative industries related programs as well. So if you're postgraduate, you can check out our London campus, which has a real entrepreneurship focus and self-employment focus down there as well. Again, I talked about things to look at that weren't league tables, and we do have lots and lots of extracurricular activities, but we are also top 10 in all of the UK league tables overall. And for art and design, we're ranked 1st or 2nd in the UK league tables, and top 40 in the QS World Rankings. So I absolutely love Loughborough. If you're interested in finding out a little bit more, scan that QR code, so you can register for some more information, or get in contact with me, and I'm very happy to have a chat one-to-one outside of these sessions. And on that note, these are our contact details. We would be very happy to answer any questions that you have, whether it's about the course, about what it's like to study at our university. If you want us to put us in touch with a current student, anything that we can help with, do let us know as you consider studying in the UK and studying at each of our institutions. So those slides will be available for you as well, and I think our details will all be on our websites if you Google our international office or our names. So now we're going to turn over to questions and answers. So this is your time to ask any questions. And a lot of choosing your university will be yourself asking you questions. And we've put some things that you might want to consider on the screen. So essentially those questions there are things that you need to have a think about. And when you're looking at universities, only you can make that decision. Where you want to study, where you want to live, the kind of university you see yourself studying at is a very, very personal decision. Just because your parents studied somewhere doesn't mean it's right for you. Because your best friend wants to go somewhere doesn't mean you'll like it. It has to be where you feel like you'll be happy. So you need to give some time to these questions and have a think about it. So please put any questions you have for us in the chat box.
Charlotte, I'm going to ask you and Jenny a question. I'm going to ask what I'm curious, because I come from a part of the world where no one ever asks what university you went to. And so I'm really curious to know, and especially because you work in the education field, on a day-to-day basis, when you meet people, how important is the name of the university that you went to in kind of your interactions?
I would say if you get a degree from any UK university, that's what you've got. You've got a degree. If you're doing a subject that you're interested in and that you're passionate about, you're going to do well in your course. You're going to come out, particularly in a creative subject, with a fantastic portfolio or skills for the rest of your life. And all universities in the UK offer networking environments. I think that necessarily, it's not the name, the fact that the time you went to university, you were, top 10 in a ranking. If you look at rankings from 20 years ago, universities go like this. In the last 5 years, universities go like this. Some go up, some go down. So just because you're choosing the best university for your course that year doesn't mean it's going to stay that way. But for me, when I talk about, when I talk to students about jobs, when I talk to our careers teams, when I've gone to interviews, it's not where did you study, it's what did you study, what did you learn, and what have you done extracurricularly that's made you into a great person that we want to employ.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I think it is more about the course than the university. As of course, very important that the university is in a location where you'll be happy, but I think it's looking a bit deeper into it as well, because I do know people who've gone to a university for the name of that university, because of course it happens to be a Russell Group university that's, of course, quite prestigious and well known, but the course they did at that university was not one of their strong points. So even though they've got the name of that university, they didn't actually enjoy studying their course quite as much as they might have done at other universities who were more well known for that particular course. So yes, it's about looking, like Jessica was saying, looking beyond the rankings and identifying the university and the town, the location where you'll be happy, but also where is particularly good at the course you want to study.
I think we'd all agree we don't want to be dismissive of places in the world where rankings are considered. And I know from speaking to some of our international students that is something that they do need to consider, because it may be asked by employers. But the good news is now, with the UK having reintroduced the graduate visa, the graduate route visa, that you can stay in the UK after you've completed your education and get some experience. And then if you decide after a couple of years of working in the UK that you're going to go home, you then also take that work experience with you, and that contributes to your profile. So it no longer is just riding on the coattails of a name of a university, but it is the candidacy that you bring to the table. So just wanted to touch on that. But not, I think we'd all agree we don't want to dismiss the rankings. The other thing I always like to say about the idea of the rankings is the UK's spectrum is very narrow, and other countries, and perhaps the US is a good example, their spectrum is much broader. So the top university, but the lower ranked universities are further down. But in the UK, the gap between the top ranked universities and the lower ranked isn't as significant. So look at the numbers in those reports, because they're often not as far apart as you might think.
In fact, we haven't mentioned the graduate route, have we? Maybe we should, in case you're not aware of this, then the graduate route was introduced in summer 21 by the UK government, and it does allow international students to remain in the UK after completing their degrees for 2 years to live and to work, and there's no sector or salary restrictions, which is really good news. And of course, especially for creative graduates, you are allowed to freelance and be self-employed, which is something that is very important to a lot of our students. They want to establish themselves as a business, for example, as a photography business, once they've completed a photography degree. So that is very important for creative graduates. And it's proved to be very popular. So we're very pleased to have the graduate route back again. I think we'll also just make sure that everyone is aware of the rest of the sessions that are taking place today. Hopefully you managed to attend some sessions yesterday, but I think this is just the first of a lot of sessions taking place today. So that QR code will take you straight to the schedule. So do please make sure you attend any sessions that you think will be of interest to you. There's some subject specific ones as well.
And just to mention that if you aren't able to attend a session, if you've got school or other activities, next week we will be sending a link with recordings of all of the sessions that we've hosted on the 2 days, so you can catch up on another time. Good.
So say one last chance for any other questions. I hope it was useful. I hope we've given you some useful information, but do feel free to ask any questions you have.
And what have we got coming up next? So in 4 minutes time, we've got media, game design, UX and VFX, and also a session on studying fashion, textiles and costume design. So if you're interested in those, jump across to that session now.
And the pitch for, I think it's at noon BST, is the academic panel, which is something new we're doing this year. And so we've got 3 professors, tutors, academics at 3 different universities who are going to share their wisdom and experience about the student experience from their perspective. So tips and tricks to be successful, things that you might not have thought of. So if you can, that's in, I guess, 3 hours from now, would that be noon? Do check out that one. I think that could be really interesting. Yeah, a bit of a counterbalance to yesterday's Ask Me Anything with the students. Now we're talking to some of the teachers. Good.
If no one has any questions, then I think should we finish it there? But thank you very much for attending.
Thanks so much.
Everyone.
Thank you, Joyce.